I'm Bianca, 28, and I should have seen the red flags when my fiancé's father looked at me like I was something stuck to his shoe. It happened at our engagement dinner. David had just proposed with his grandmother's ring, and his father Richard barely glanced up from cutting his steak. "So you're the one," he said, not bothering to make it sound like a compliment. David squeezed my hand under the table, whispering that his dad needed time to warm up to people. 3 months later, I was still waiting for that warmth, but now I know why it never came, and what they had planned for me all along. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt judged before you even opened your mouth. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. My father, Robert Harrison, built Harrison Industries from a small construction company into one of the largest commercial developers on the East Coast. Growing up, I watched him work 18-hour days, missing school plays and birthdays, all to create something lasting. By the time I graduated college, his empire was worth over $200 million. I could have coasted on Daddy's money. Lord knows enough people expected me to. Instead, I earned my MBA, worked at competing firms to learn the business from the ground up, and only joined Harrison Industries when I'd proven myself elsewhere. Dad respected that. He'd always taught me that respect was earned, not inherited. David Williams seemed to understand that when we first met at a charity auction. He was a marketing director at a mid-sized advertising firm, charming and ambitious. We bonded over our shared work ethic and love of old movies. He treated me like Bianca the person, not Bianca the heiress. At least I thought he did. The first time I met his family, his mother, Patricia, gushed over my vintage Chanel bag, asking where I'd gotten it. When I mentioned it was my grandmother's, she seemed impressed. Richard, however, had studied me with calculating eyes, asking pointed questions about my real job versus my family connections. "Dad's just protective," David explained later. "He built his business from nothing. He doesn't trust people who had it easy." I bit back the urge to point out that my father had also built everything from nothing, and that I'd worked plenty hard myself. Instead, I smiled and said I understood. That was my first mistake. The Williams family owned a small but struggling marketing consultancy. What I didn't know then was just how desperate they were. 3 generations of work had created a comfortable facade, but underneath they were barely keeping the lights on. They needed me more than I needed them, a fact that would become crystal clear later. "New money," Patricia had whispered to her sister at David's birthday party. "You know how they are. All flash, no substance." I'd been in the kitchen getting more ice when I overheard. Through the doorway, I could see Richard nodding along. David could do better. Someone with real class, not just cash. The irony wasn't lost on me. My grandmother had been old Connecticut money before she married my grandfather, a first-generation Italian immigrant who'd worked construction. I had both pedigrees, but apparently neither impressed them. What I didn't realize then was that their criticism came from fear. They were terrified I'd see through their act and walk away before they could secure their financial future through me. David found me standing there with a bag of ice in my hands, my face carefully neutral. "Everything okay, babe?" "Perfect," I replied, though something cold had settled in my chest. "Just getting refreshments for your lovely family." He didn't catch the edge in my voice. Or maybe he chose to ignore it, something he'd get very good at. The next few months brought subtle digs. Richard would ask David about his career plans right in front of me, as if I might be holding him back. Patricia would make comments about how some people never had to worry about money, so they couldn't understand real struggles. I started bringing homemade cookies to family dinners, hoping to show I wasn't some spoiled princess. Patricia praised them, then asked if the help had taught me to bake. When I explained I'd learned from my Italian great-grandmother, she seemed genuinely surprised that I had actually spent time in a kitchen. David assured me they were warming up to me. I wasn't so sure, but I loved him, or thought I did. Looking back, I think I was in love with the idea of him, the man who seemed to value me for me. The real test came when my father mentioned he was looking for a marketing firm to handle a new commercial development project. It was a $1 million contract, the kind that could transform a small agency like Williams and Associates. "You should suggest David's family," Dad said over dinner. "If they're as good as you say, it could be mutually beneficial." I hesitated. Something about mixing business with these particular in-laws felt dangerous. But David was excited when I mentioned it, and his gratitude felt good after months of his family's coldness. "This could be huge for us," he said, pulling me into a hug. "Thank you for believing in us." I wanted to believe in us too. What I didn't know was that David was already calculating how to cut me out of the credit once he got what he needed. The business proposal meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday in November. My father had agreed to meet with Richard and David at our offices downtown. a courtesy he rarely extended to smaller firms. I'd arranged everything perfectly, wanting David's family to see that Harrisons took them seriously. The morning of the meeting, Patricia called. "Bianca, dear, I hope you won't be attending today's meeting. Business is so much better handled man to man, don't you think?" I paused, phone pressed to my ear. "I beg your pardon?" "Well, you understand. Richard and David need to establish their own relationship with your father. Having you there might complicate things, make it seem less professional." The audacity took my breath away. I was Harrison Industries' VP of Development. This was literally my department. But before I could respond, she'd already hung up. I called David immediately. "Did you know your mother just asked me not to attend my own meeting?" "She what?" He sounded genuinely confused. "No, I'm sure she didn't mean it like that. Maybe she's just nervous about making a good impression. By suggesting I'm unprofessional? Bianca, please, don't make this a bigger deal than it is. Today's really important for my family." There it was. His family's feelings mattered more than mine. But here's what I didn't tell David. I went to that meeting anyway. I sat in the conference room next door and listened through the thin walls, taking notes on everything they discussed. Smart move, because that's when I heard Richard's real pitch. "We know this opportunity came through Bianca," he told my father. "But we want you to know we'll deliver results based purely on merit. We're not looking for handouts or special treatment because of family connections." My father later told me he found the comment odd, since the connection was exactly why they'd gotten the meeting. But Richard was already establishing his narrative. They'd succeed despite my involvement, not because of it. I started documenting everything that day. Every email I sent them, every template I provided, every introduction I made. Call it insurance or call it intuition. But I knew I'd need proof of my contributions later. David was ecstatic when they got the contract. We celebrated with champagne at their favorite restaurant, the same place where he'd proposed. His parents were gracious in their gratitude, thanking me for putting in a good word. A good word. As if I hadn't personally arranged the meeting, provided the initial proposal template, and spent hours prepping them on Dad's preferences and expectations. Have you ever felt invisible in your own success story? Share in the comments if you've ever had someone else take credit for your work. But I smiled and accepted their thanks gracefully. After all, we were going to be family soon. Wedding planning revealed new layers of the Williams family dynamics. Patricia had strong opinions about everything from the venue, somewhere more intimate than those flashy hotel ballrooms, to the guest list. "Do we really need to invite all of your father's business associates?" She seemed to forget that my father was paying for the wedding. "I just think something simpler would be more appropriate," she explained during one particularly tense planning session. "David's not comfortable with too much extravagance." David, who had specifically requested the live band and upgraded bar package, nodded along. "Mom knows what she's talking about. She planned 3 weddings for my sisters." I bit my tongue. All 3 of those weddings had been lovely, modest affairs with fewer than 50 guests each. Beautiful in their simplicity, but hardly comparable to what my father wanted to provide for his only daughter. During this time, I started noticing changes in David. Small things at first. He'd forget to mention when his family excluded me from gatherings. He'd downplay my role when telling people how his business was growing. He started treating me more like a useful accessory than a partner. The compromise was a garden party aesthetic at the country club, elegant but understated. Patricia seemed satisfied that we weren't being too showy. Then came the bachelor and bachelorette parties. David's best man organized a weekend in Vegas. Nothing too wild, just golf, good restaurants, and some casino time. I thought it sounded perfect for him. My maid of honor planned a spa weekend in Napa Valley. Wine tasting, massages, and quality time with my closest friends. Patricia somehow got wind of the plans. A spa weekend? How extravagant. And in Napa Valley, of all places. Couldn't you just do a nice dinner locally? "It's my bachelorette party, Patricia. My friends want to celebrate." Well, it just seems much, especially compared to what David's doing. People will talk about the disparity. There it was again. That constant concern about how things looked, about being too much. I was learning that in the Williams family, being successful was fine as long as you felt guilty about it. The wedding itself was beautiful. My father walked me down the aisle with tears in his eyes, proud and emotional. David looked handsome in his tuxedo, smiling as I approached. For a moment, surrounded by flowers and music and people I loved, everything felt perfect. Richard's toast at the reception was gracious, welcoming me to the family and praising David for finding someone who shared his values. Patricia dabbed at her eyes as she spoke about gaining a daughter. But during the father-daughter dance, my dad whispered something that stuck with me. "You know I love you, sweetheart. I just want you to be happy. And if anyone ever makes you feel like you need to shrink yourself to fit into their idea of who you should be, you come home. You always have a place here." I hugged him tighter, wondering why he felt the need to say that on my wedding day. Now I know, Dad had already seen what I was too in love to notice. The first year of marriage was when the mask really started slipping. We moved into a beautiful townhouse in David's neighborhood, a compromise between my downtown condo and his family's desire to keep him close by. I threw myself into making it our home. Fresh paint, new furniture, a garden that would bloom in spring. David seemed happy with the results, especially when his parents complimented my decorating skills. "You've made this place really elegant," Patricia admitted during one of their weekly dinners. Much more sophisticated than David's old bachelor pad. It was the closest thing to a genuine compliment I'd received from her in over a year. I should have enjoyed it, but by then I was starting to see the pattern. They only praised me when I was useful to them. Work was going well for both of us. The Williams agency had successfully completed their first project for Harrison Industries, and Dad had been so pleased he'd recommended them to 2 other developers. Richard's business was thriving, because of connections I'd provided, though he seemed to have forgotten that detail. David's confidence grew with his family's success, but not in a good way. He started talking about expanding the agency, maybe hiring additional staff. He'd always been ambitious, but now he carried himself differently, more entitled, more dismissive of my contributions. The change was subtle at first. He'd correct me when I told stories about our dating life, insisting his version was more accurate. He'd make decisions about our social calendar without consulting me, assuming I'd be flexible with my schedule since my job was more accommodating. When I pointed out that I was actually quite busy with several major projects, he'd laugh it off. "Come on, babe, it's not like you're going to get fired if you take a long lunch." The implication stung. Yes, my father owned the company, but I'd earned my position. I worked as hard as anyone else there, often harder because I felt the need to prove myself constantly. But David didn't see it that way. To him, my job was a hobby that my father indulged. His work was the real career, the one that mattered. The shift became more noticeable during family gatherings. Richard would ask David about his projects with Harrison Industries, as if David had personally landed and managed every contract. When I'd try to add details about the development process or timeline, David would speak over me or redirect the conversation. "Bianca doesn't handle the day-to-day stuff," he'd explain. "That's more my area." It wasn't true, but correcting him in front of his family felt petty. So I smiled and stayed quiet, letting him have his moment, while mentally adding each slight to my growing file of evidence. My father noticed the change during one of our monthly lunch meetings. "You seem different lately," he observed, studying me over his coffee cup. "Everything okay at home?" "Fine," I assured him. "Marriage is just an adjustment." "Is it?" His expression suggested he wasn't buying it. "Because Richard Williams called me yesterday to discuss expanding their contract." He spoke as if David was the primary point of contact for all their Harrison projects. Heat rose in my cheeks. "David's very involved in the relationship. I'm sure he is. But you're my VP of development, Bianca. These are your projects. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." His words stayed with me as I drove home that evening. When had I started allowing David to take credit for my work? And why did it feel so difficult to reclaim it? The answer was simple. I was still hoping the man I'd married would remember he loved me more than he loved what I could provide. By early December, the Williams family's financial situation had completely transformed. Richard's struggling consultancy was now a thriving agency with a waiting list of clients. They'd moved to a larger office, hired additional staff, and were planning their expansion to Atlanta, all built on contracts I had secured for them. The invitation to their Christmas dinner arrived in November, beautifully calligraphed on expensive stationery. Patricia had outdone herself, planning what she called a proper family celebration at their home. "It's going to be wonderful," David said, showing me the invitation. "Mom's been planning this for months. She really wants to show how much you mean to our family." Something in his tone made me look up from the financial reports I'd been reviewing. There was an excitement there, but also something else. Nervousness, guilt. How many people will be there? Just the immediate family. My parents, my sisters, and their husbands, a few cousins, maybe 20 people total. The number seemed reasonable, but something nagged at me. I'd learned to trust my instincts when it came to the Williams family. They never did anything without multiple layers of meaning. "This is quite fancy for a family dinner," I observed, studying the invitation. "Mom just wants everything to be perfect. She's really grateful for how much the business has grown this year." Grown. Not how much you've helped us grow, or thanks to your connections. Just grown. As if it had happened naturally. December flew by with work deadlines and holiday preparations. Dad's company was closing 3 major deals before year-end, which meant long days and plenty of stress. The Williams agency was also busy, riding the wave of success from their Harrison contracts, and several new clients I'd quietly referred to them. 2 weeks before Christmas, I made an interesting discovery. My assistant mentioned that Richard Williams had been calling other Harrison Industries executives, introducing himself as their strategic marketing partner, and downplaying my role in their relationship. That's when I knew something big was coming. They weren't just taking credit for my work, they were actively trying to erase me from the business relationships I'd created. The week before Christmas, David seemed unusually attentive. He brought me coffee in the mornings, suggested we watch my favorite movies, even offered to help with my Christmas shopping. "You've been working so hard lately," he said, massaging my shoulders as I reviewed contracts at our kitchen table. "You deserve to be spoiled a little." It felt good to have his attention again, but there was something performative about it, like he was following a script. "Tomorrow's going to be perfect," he kept saying about the dinner. Mom's really outdone herself this time. I went to bed feeling uneasy about the evening, but looking forward to finally feeling like part of his family. I had no idea they were planning to cut me out of it forever. Christmas Eve morning, I had an early meeting with my father to finalize some year-end contracts. As I was leaving his office, he stopped me. "Sweetheart, there's something I need to tell you. Richard Williams has been reaching out to our other executives, suggesting that future contracts go directly through him instead of your department." My blood turned cold. "What did you tell them?" "I told them that all Harrison business goes through my VP of development. You. But Bianca, be careful. I don't like what I'm seeing from that family." "What do you mean?" Dad studied my face for a moment. "I've been in business for 30 years. I know when someone's positioning for a takeover. They're trying to cut you out of your own deals." I spent the day thinking about his words while I finished up work. By the time I got home to get ready for dinner, I'd made a decision. Whatever the Williams family had planned tonight, I was going to be ready for it. I chose a burgundy silk dress that I'd worn to company galas, paired with pearl earrings my grandmother had left me. Elegant, but not ostentatious. Perfect for a family dinner. Or a declaration of war. David had already gone to help his mother with preparations, kissing me goodbye with that same strange excitement from the night before. "Wear something nice," he'd said. Mom specifically mentioned she hoped everyone would dress up. When I arrived at the Williams house, it was clear this wasn't the intimate family dinner David had described. Cars lined the street, and through the windows I could see at least 30 people moving around inside. David met me at the door, handsome in a navy suit I'd never seen before. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing my cheek. But his eyes held something I couldn't quite identify. Guilt? Relief that I'd shown up for whatever they had planned? "Thank you. Quite a crowd for a family dinner." "Yeah, it kind of grew. You know how these things happen." "No," I thought. "I know how Patricia Williams happens. Nothing she did was accidental." The living room was packed with people I recognized, and several I didn't. Not just immediate family, but neighbors, family friends, business associates. Several people I recognized from the marketing industry, some of whom had been calling Richard about potential contracts. This wasn't a family dinner. This was a networking event designed to establish Richard and David as the faces of their success story, and I was about to become the footnote they erased. What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments below. The evening unfolded exactly as I'd suspected it would. Dinner was served buffet-style with professional catering, a far cry from the homemade family meal Patricia had described. People clustered in small groups with their plates, and every conversation I tried to join seemed to exclude me. I found myself standing alone by the fireplace, watching David work the room like a politician. Every few minutes, someone would approach him with congratulations or questions about his remarkable business growth. "Bianca, dear, you look a bit lost." Patricia appeared at my elbow with a wine glass. "Here, try this. It's from a vineyard Richard's been wanting to invest in." The wine was expensive, probably more than most people spent on a month of groceries. Another sign that this evening was about displaying their newfound wealth. "It's lovely. Patricia, I have to ask. This is quite different from the intimate family dinner David described." Her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Oh, you know how these things grow. Word got out about our little celebration, and people kept asking to join. We couldn't very well turn away friends and colleagues." "Celebration of what?" "Exactly." "Why, David's incredible success this year. The business has been doing so wonderfully. Richard thought it was time to acknowledge how far he's come." That cold feeling in my stomach intensified. David's success. Not our success, not the family business success, but specifically David's individual achievement. Across the room, I could see my husband holding court near the dining table. Richard stood beside him, one hand on David's shoulder in a paternal gesture of pride. They were telling a story that had everyone laughing and nodding appreciatively. I moved closer to hear, and that's when I got my first real taste of what they'd planned. Took real vision to see the potential, Richard was saying. David spotted an opportunity with Harrison Industries and pursued it relentlessly. That's the mark of a true entrepreneur, seeing possibilities others miss. Dad, come on, David protested modestly, but his pleased expression betrayed how much he was enjoying the attention. It was just good timing and smart networking. Nonsense. You earned every single contract through pure merit. No shortcuts, no favors, just talent and determination. The lies hit me like physical blows. I stood there listening to them completely rewrite history, erasing my contributions from the story of their success. A woman I didn't recognize approached me. You must be so proud of your husband. David was just telling us how he built this business from nothing. It's inspiring to see someone work so hard and achieve their dreams. I managed a tight smile. He certainly has worked hard. And you've been so supportive. Oh, I'm sure. It must be wonderful having a husband who's really making something of himself. The comment was meant as a compliment, but it revealed how thoroughly they'd established their narrative. I was the supportive wife, cheering from the sidelines while my brilliant husband built his empire. An empire that was actually built on my family's business and my personal relationships. The lies continued all evening. Story after story about David's business acumen, his natural leadership abilities, his bright future. I smiled and nodded, playing the role of the proud wife while documenting every fabrication in my memory. Around 8 o'clock, Richard called for everyone's attention. He stood by the fireplace, raising his wine glass with theatrical flair. Friends, family, thank you all for being here tonight. As most of you know, this year has been transformational for Williams & Associates. We've grown from a small local firm to a company with major contracts and unlimited potential. Applause filled the room. David beamed beside his father, accepting congratulations from nearby guests. I remained perfectly still, my wine glass untouched in my hands. This success didn't happen by accident, Richard continued. It happened because my son had the vision to see opportunities others missed and the courage to pursue them. David, your mother and I couldn't be prouder. More applause. David hugged his parents while Patricia dabbed at her eyes with obvious emotion. Now, as we look toward the new year, we're excited to announce that Williams & Associates is expanding. We've secured additional contracts with several major developers, and we're opening a second office in Atlanta. The room erupted in cheers and congratulations. David shook hands and accepted backslaps, the conquering hero of his own success story. I felt like I was watching a play about someone else's life. Everything they were celebrating, every opportunity they were describing, had come through my family's business connections. Contracts I had negotiated, relationships I had facilitated, and I had become completely invisible in the story of my own contributions. Bianca, you must be so proud, someone said beside me. I turned to find Mrs. Henderson, a family friend who'd known David since childhood. Of course, I managed. David works very hard. It's wonderful that he found someone who understands his ambition. So many young wives want their husbands to prioritize family time over building something lasting. You clearly support his dreams. The assumption stung, as if I were some kind of obstacle that David had successfully overcome, rather than the person who'd made his success possible. I excused myself and stepped onto the back patio, needing air and space to think. Through the glass doors, I could see David still surrounded by well-wishers, still basking in praise for achievements that weren't entirely his own. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Hope you're having a wonderful evening, sweetheart. Remember what I told you this morning. His warning about them cutting me out suddenly felt prophetic. This entire evening was designed to establish David as the architect of his own success, with me relegated to the role of grateful beneficiary of his achievements. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd gotten so caught up in their own performance that they'd forgotten I wasn't actually helpless. I was Robert Harrison's daughter, and I'd learned a few things about business strategy over the years. Time to remind them of that fact. I was still outside when David found me 20 minutes later. His face was flushed with wine and excitement, his eyes bright with the satisfaction of being the center of attention. There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you. Mom wants to make a toast to thank you for all your support this year. Support. I turned the word over slowly. Is that what we're calling it? His expression shifted slightly. What do you mean? I mean the contracts you're celebrating tonight. The ones that supposedly demonstrate your remarkable business vision. Tell me, David, do you actually believe you earned those on your own merit? The question hit him like cold water. His celebratory mood faltered, and I saw him calculating his response. Of course I worked for them. We both did. Both of us? I raised an eyebrow. Because from where I've been standing all evening, it sounds like you did everything single-handedly. Amazing vision, pure talent, no shortcuts or favors. He glanced toward the house where his celebration was waiting. Bianca, why are you doing this? Tonight's supposed to be special. Special for whom? You and your family have spent the entire evening erasing me from the story of your success. Success that wouldn't exist without me. That's not true. Isn't it? Let's review, shall we? I began counting on my fingers. I arranged your first meeting with my father. I provided the proposal template you used. I coached you through his preferences and expectations. I introduced you to 3 other developers who became clients, and I've been quietly referring business to you for months. His face had gone pale. I never asked you to do any of that. No, you just took credit for it. There's a difference. Look, maybe Dad got carried away with the praise tonight, but that doesn't mean... It means exactly what I think it means. You've been systematically taking credit for my work while positioning yourself as the real talent in this relationship. David ran his hands through his hair, his carefully styled appearance beginning to crack. So what do you want me to do? Go in there and tell everyone I'm a fraud? I want you to tell the truth. About how you got those contracts. About who made the introductions. About where your opportunities actually came from. I can't do that. The words hung between us like a confession. Not, I won't, or that's not necessary, but I can't. As if acknowledging my contributions would somehow destroy him. In that moment, I finally understood what I'd married. Not a man who loved me, but one who'd seen me as a stepping stone to the success he felt he deserved. The Williams family hadn't just been using me. They'd been planning to discard me once they no longer needed my connections. Then we have a problem, I said quietly. Before he could respond, Richard's voice called from the house. David, Bianca, come back inside. We're ready for Patricia's toast. We stared at each other, the weight of unspoken ultimatums filling the space between us. They're waiting, he said finally. Yes, I agreed, straightening my shoulders. They are. We returned to the party, but everything had changed for me. I saw the room clearly now. The expensive catering, the business associates, the carefully orchestrated celebration. This wasn't just about taking credit for past success. This was about establishing David as the independent architect of future opportunities, cutting me out of the relationships I'd built. Patricia approached with a fresh glass of wine, her smile bright and theatrical. There you are. We were starting to worry. David, your colleague from the Morrison account was asking about your expansion plans. Such exciting developments. Thanks, Mom. I'm really proud of what we've built. What we've built. The pronoun choice felt deliberate and completely false. Bianca, dear, Patricia continued, I hope you know how grateful we all are. David is so lucky to have such a supportive wife. The statement was perfectly crafted to elicit the response she wanted. A gracious acknowledgement of David's success. A humble acceptance of my supporting role. A public validation of their narrative. Instead, I smiled and said, I've certainly contributed more than most people realize. Patricia's expression flickered almost imperceptibly. Of course, dear. A good marriage is all about teamwork. Richard joined us, clearly in high spirits. Bianca, I was just telling the Hendersons about David's remarkable year. 23 successful projects, including that major Harrison Industries contract. Pure talent and determination. He was looking directly at me as he spoke, and I realized this wasn't accidental. They wanted me to hear the lies. They wanted me to know they were erasing me from the story. 23 projects, I repeated slowly. That's impressive, Richard. Tell me, how many of those clients did David actually bring to the firm himself? The question caught him off guard. Well, networking is a crucial business skill. I'm not asking about networking. I'm asking about origination. How many clients has David personally developed, without any assistance or introductions from others? Richard's smile became strained. Business is about leveraging relationships, Bianca. That's how successful people operate. Absolutely. So you're acknowledging that David's success has been built on leveraging other people's relationships? The conversation around us had gone quiet. People were starting to listen, sensing tension beneath our polite words. David stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. Bianca, what are you doing? I'm asking clarifying questions about your remarkable achievements, darling. After all, accuracy is important when we're celebrating success, don't you think? Patricia tried to intervene. Why don't we move to the living room? I have a lovely photo slideshow of David's professional highlights. But Richard wasn't done. He was angry now, his mask of joviality slipping. I think what Bianca is trying to say is that she feels she deserves more recognition for David's accomplishments. Recognition? I set down my wine glass with deliberate precision. No, Richard. I'm not looking for recognition. I'm simply interested in honesty. And what exactly are you implying? The room had gone completely silent now. 30 people watching a drama unfold at what was supposed to be a celebration. Richard's face hardened, and I saw the real man beneath the polished facade. You know what, Bianca? I think it's time someone said what we've all been thinking. David grabbed his father's arm. Dad, don't... But Richard shook him off, his voice carrying clearly across the silent room. You're nothing but worthless trash, and my son deserves better than you. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. I felt the shock ripple through the room, saw faces turning toward us with expressions of horror and fascination. David stood frozen beside his father, his mouth slightly open, his eyes wide with something that might have been panic. This was his moment, his chance to defend his wife, to show that he chose love over convenience. He said nothing. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw the truth I'd been avoiding for months. He wasn't shocked by his father's words. He was relieved that someone else had finally said what he'd been thinking. The silence stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Everyone waiting to see what would happen next. I smiled, a calm, composed smile that seemed to unnerve Richard more than any outburst would have. You know what, Richard? I said, my voice carrying clearly in the silent room. You're absolutely right. The room seemed to exhale collectively, as if my agreement had diffused a bomb. Richard looked momentarily confused, like a boxer who'd thrown a punch and hit air instead of his target. I am worthless trash, I continued, my voice conversational, almost cheerful. And David does deserve better than me. I turned to look at my husband, who was still standing there like a statue. Don't you think so, sweetheart? Your father's assessment seems quite accurate. David's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The man who'd been so eloquent all evening accepting praise had apparently lost his voice. In fact, I continued, addressing the room now, I think David deserves someone who can truly appreciate his remarkable talent for... What was it, Richard? Seeing opportunities others miss? A few nervous laughs from the crowd, people unsure whether this was still a fight or had become something else entirely. Someone who can properly value his gift for building relationships and securing contracts entirely through his own merit. I picked up my purse from the side table where I'd set it earlier. Someone who won't hold him back from the success he so clearly deserves. Patricia stepped forward, her face a mask of false concern. Bianca, dear, you're being dramatic. Richard didn't mean... Oh, but he did mean it, I interrupted gently. And he's absolutely right. I am trash. The kind of trash that arranges meetings, provides templates, makes introductions, and secures million-dollar contracts. Completely worthless. The sarcasm was so thick you could cut it with a knife, but I delivered every word with a sweet smile. So, I'm going to do you all a favor and remove myself from David's bright future. I slung my purse over my shoulder and headed toward the door. After all, you wouldn't want worthless trash cluttering up your success story. Richard's face had gone from smug to alarmed. Now wait just a minute. No need to see me out, I called over my shoulder. I know the way. I walked through that room of 30 stunned people with my head high and my dignity intact. As I reached the front door, I heard David finally find his voice. Bianca, wait. Don't be so dramatic about this. I turned back one last time, looking at the man I'd thought I'd married. Dramatic? No, David, this is just practical. Your family wanted me gone, and now I am. Congratulations on getting exactly what you wanted. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click. I sat in my car for exactly 30 seconds, allowing myself that moment to process what had just happened. Then I pulled out my phone and made a call. Dad, it's me. Yes, I know it's late. Listen, I need you to call Richard Williams first thing Monday morning and cancel all Harrison Industries contracts with his firm. There was a pause. Everything okay, sweetheart? It will be. I'll explain everything tomorrow. Oh, and Dad, make sure you mention that the decision came directly from your VP of development. I hung up and started the car, but I wasn't done. I had one more call to make. Morrison Development? This is Bianca Harrison from Harrison Industries. I know it's Christmas Eve, but I need to speak with someone about your marketing contracts. By the time I got home, I'd made 6 calls. Every client I'd referred to Williams and Associates, Every relationship I'd facilitated, every connection I'd made on their behalf. Christmas morning, my phone started buzzing at 7 a.m. Text after text, call after call, all from David and his family. I let them go to voicemail while I made pancakes and opened presents with my father. Around noon, David's texts became increasingly frantic. "Bianca, please call me. Dad didn't mean what he said. Morrison just canceled their contract." "What did you do?" "3 more clients canceled this morning. We need to talk. The Henderson Group is pulling their account too. This is insane. Please, I'm begging you. My family's business is falling apart." By evening, my voicemail was full and my phone was dead from the constant notifications. I plugged it in and saw I had 47 missed calls and 83 text messages. The final text sent at 11:47 p.m. on Christmas Day was from Richard Williams himself. "Bianca, I apologize for what I said. It was inappropriate and hurtful. Please don't punish David's entire family for my mistake. We can work this out." I deleted it without responding. The next morning, I woke to find my phone had exploded overnight with more messages. Apparently, word had spread through the industry that Williams & Associates had lost multiple major accounts in a single day. David's final desperate message came at 6 a.m. "Please, Bianca, I love you. We can fix this. My dad is sorry. The whole family is sorry. Just tell me what you want." I stared at that message for a long time, then typed my response. 4 words that said everything that needed to be said. "Don't mess with trash." Then I blocked his number, packed my things, and moved back into my downtown condo. 3 days later, I got a call from my father. "Sweetheart, I just heard from my attorney. Apparently, David Williams has filed for divorce and is claiming abandonment. He wants half of your assets." I laughed. Actually laughed. Let him try. I documented everything. "Dad, every contract I arranged, every client I referred, every template I provided. I have emails, phone records, and witness statements proving my contributions to his business. And thanks to the prenup you insisted we sign, he's entitled to exactly nothing from my personal assets. But more importantly, his family just lost 7-figure annual contracts because they forgot who actually earned them." My father was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm proud of you, Bianca. It took courage to walk away." "I didn't walk away, Dad. I stopped carrying people who thought I was too worthless to deserve credit for my own work." 6 months later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Williams & Associates had filed for bankruptcy. David was working as a marketing coordinator at a small firm in the suburbs, making about 1/10 of what his family's business had been bringing in during their Harrison Industries days. Patricia had to go back to work as a receptionist. Richard was driving for a rideshare service to pay their mortgage. As for me, I'd been promoted to Senior Vice President of Development and was leading Harrison Industries' expansion into 3 new markets. My father had publicly credited me with developing our most successful client acquisition strategies. I never responded to any of David's messages, never acknowledged his divorce papers except through my attorney, never gave him the satisfaction of knowing how much his family's betrayal had hurt. But sometimes, when people ask me about my brief marriage, I tell them about the Christmas dinner where my father-in-law called me worthless trash, and how agreeing with him was the smartest business decision I ever made. After all, one person's trash is another person's treasure. And I've always been very good at recognizing my own value, even when others can't see it. The moral of the story? Never underestimate someone who's been quietly keeping receipts. And never, ever bite the hand that feeds you, especially when that hand belongs to someone who knows exactly where all the business relationships came from. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more tales of people who learned not to underestimate the quiet ones. Trust me, we're usually the ones you should worry about most.